Today we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem to solve for parts of a right triangle. Before we can do that, we have to look at a right triangle. A right triangle has one right angle. The two sides that come out of the right angle, which are A and B, they touch the right angle, are called the legs. And the side that is opposite the right angle is called the hypotenuse, and we usually call that C. The Pythagorean theorem is used to find a missing side length on a right triangle. To do this, we use the formula a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. So for these first four examples, we're going to be finding the hypotenuse. Remember, the legs are the sides that touch the right angle. Our hypotenuse is opposite the right angle. Again, we have the two legs, and we are missing the hypotenuse in number 2. The legs are always the shortest two sides. The hypotenuse is always longer than both the legs. I'm going to highlight these. You might want to too if you have a highlighter to help you see. So it doesn't matter which leg you call A and which leg you call B. I'm going to do 12 squared plus 5 squared equals x squared. And then I'm actually going to take my calculator if I need it and do 12 squared plus 5 squared. You can do it all at one time, but sometimes I like to write it down. So I know that 12 squared is 144, 5 squared is 25, and it equals x squared. Now I know that 144 plus 25 is 169 equals x squared. And like we learned yesterday in class, the way to undo x squared, we have to find out what number times itself is equal to 169. So I take the square root. When I do that, I get the answer of 13. Also remember, 13 should be my longest side, and because it is, this answer makes sense to me. Next, let's look at number 2. Again, it doesn't matter which side I call A and which side I call B. So I'm going to do 18 squared plus 15 squared equals x squared. Then I'm going to use my calculator and actually do 18 squared plus 15 squared. Don't forget you have an x squared key on your calculator. So when I did that, I put it all in the calculator at one time. I did 18 squared plus 15 squared, and I got 549 equals x squared. Now my last step is to take the square root of 549. So don't forget to check your notes from yesterday how to find a square root. And we should get 23.43. When we do our square root, it does say here round to the nearest tenth when necessary. So again, my calculator keeps going 23.4307, but I'm going to do 23.4. Remember, the tenths place is the place right after the decimal point. Let's look at problem number 3. Here I'm going to do 29 squared plus 14 squared equals x squared. Then I'm going to take my calculator and do 29 squared plus 14 squared, and I get 1037 equals x squared. My last step again is take the square root. And when I do that, I get 32.2. Remember, I had to round to the nearest tenth. After the 2 came a 0, so the 0 tells the 2 to stay. Remember, that side should be longer than the other two sides. And it is, so that makes sense. Let's look at number 4. I'm going to do 12 squared plus 9 squared equals x squared. I'm going to take my calculator and do 12 squared plus 9 squared, and I get 225 equals x squared. What number times itself gives me 225? And after a while, you should memorize that that is 15. Or use your calculator. Now, in the next two problems, I notice that one of my legs is missing. And they give me the hypotenuse. So I know my hypotenuse, I know the longest side, but I'm missing one of the legs. So we're going to manipulate this formula. Instead now we're going to do c squared minus b squared equals a squared. So we're going to take our hypotenuse, which was the longest side in number 5, which is 10 squared, and we're going to subtract the leg that they give us, which is 8 squared, and that's going to equal x squared. So I know that 10 squared is 100, 8 squared is 64. When I subtract, I get 36 equals x squared. And our last step is to take the square root of both sides, and x equals 6. Notice 6 is shorter than 10. Remember, 10 has to be the longest side because that's our hypotenuse. Again, when I see the word hypotenuse, I think of hippopotamus, which are very big. That's how I remember that the hypotenuse is the longest side. And finally, we're going to look at number 6. We're going to do 25 squared minus 23 squared equals x squared. Sorry, I'm writing on an iPad. It makes it a little more challenging. So that I'm going to use my calculator and do 25 squared minus 23 squared equals 96 equals x squared. Then I'm going to take the square root of 96, and I get 9.79. So I'm going to round that to 9.8. And that's how you solve these. We're going to continue finding the missing leg in number 7. So x is one of the legs, and 4 is my other leg. We know that 9 is the hypotenuse. So again, I'm going to do 9 squared minus 4 squared equals x squared. 81, I know that 9 squared is 81, minus 16, which is 4 squared, gives me 65. Again, if you don't know this, just use your calculator. And my last step is to take the square root. X equals, and I take my square root of 65, and I get about 8.1. Same thing with number 8. My hypotenuse is 18, that's my longest side. My two shorter sides are 17 and x. So I'm going to do 18 squared minus 17 squared equals x squared. I'm going to use my calculator and do 18 squared minus 17 squared equals, and I get 35 equals x squared. Don't forget, we have to get the x by itself. Take the square root and the square root of 35, and you should get about 5.9. So then I want you to try the next few problems. I would prefer if you turned the video off and actually tried these. Before you do, let's look at the first one, number 9. Here we have the legs, and we're missing our hypotenuse. So here we're going to do the a squared plus b squared equals c squared. This one we have the hypotenuse, but we're missing a leg. So here we're going to be adding. Here I know I'm going to be subtracting. Same thing with number 11. Here's a leg, here's a leg. I'm missing one of the legs. So as soon as I know I'm missing one of the legs, I know I will be subtracting. Same thing with number 12. Here's my hypotenuse that's missing. I have one leg, two legs. So in that case, I know I'm going to be adding. Number 13, I have my hypotenuse, and I'm missing one of the legs. So I'm going to be subtracting. And then in the last one, 14, I have my hypotenuse that's missing, and I have the two legs that I know the numbers for. So here I am again going to be adding. So what I would like you to do is pause the video, try these problems, and then unpause it, and the answers will pop up. So hopefully you've had a chance to try these problems. Here is the work, including the answers to these problems. Now let's look at the last section, testing for a right triangle. Again, you're going to do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A and B are always the shorter sides. They are the shortest. They're the shortest sides. C is always going to be your longest side. So if you're looking at problem number 15, 10 and 15 are the shortest sides. So we're going to do 10 squared plus 15 squared equals 20 squared. We're going to take our calculator. We're going to do what is 10 squared plus 15 squared. I get 325. 20 squared we should know is 200. 400. Are these equal? No. Since these are not equal, this is not a right triangle. They have to be equal. So let's look at the next one. My two short sides come first. So we're going to do 7 squared plus 24 squared. Does that equal 25 squared? Okay, I know that 25 squared is 625. Then I'm going to take my calculator and do 7 squared plus 24 squared, and I get 625. Now, this works. So this is a yes. This is a right triangle. I'm writing the word yes there. So what I would like you to do is I would like you to try the next 4 problems. So remember, the first 2 numbers are our short sides. And I think they wrote them nicely in all of these problems. So you're going to set it up, and you're going to see if when you square the 2 short sides, does it equal the square of the long side, the hypotenuse? If it's like number 15 and they're not equal, then it's not a right triangle. If it's like number 16, then they are a right triangle. Pause the video and then unpause it when you're done and check your answers. So here are the correct answers. Number 14 was not a right triangle. Oops, sorry, number 17 was not a right triangle. Number 18 was not a right triangle. Number 19 was a right triangle. And number 20 was not a right triangle. Now you're going to complete the con practice and the buzz math practice. Good luck.